Hi, I'm Kirsten on the Rizom team, and today I'm going to show you how to unwrap Discord user Dozie's watch. Dozie created a nice little low poly watch for himself. He came to our Discord and decided to share it as a freebie, and that's what we're going to be working on. The first thing I want to show you though is how to load a mesh. I know that most of you probably already know how to do that, but I did want to show you a trick there is to it. So instead of loading or loading with UVs, if you are working on the same project, it usually suffices to either hit reload or reload with UVs. So instead of, for example, just going to the recent file list and loading this, I know it's OCD pretty. Um, you can just hit Shift R instead, and that will load the mesh with 0 UVs, or you can go Control Shift R. Whoops, I meant Control R, sorry. Um, I am a firm believer in using as many keyboard shortcuts as I can because it just makes your workflow a lot more efficient, and there's also, less clickety. Okay, so now we've loaded the model. I thought I'd walk you through how to set up your workspace and also create tiles for a potential UDIM export. Then I'm going to do manual cutting and showing some tips and tricks there. Then I'm going to be using some of Rizom's scripts. And then I'm going to walk you through how to use the auto scenes at the end. And the reason for that is that I want you to, since this tutorial is aimed at beginners, I actually do want you to learn the basics of cutting and also unwrapping before we then go to auto scenes, because then you already have a small toolkit that you can use for potential troubleshooting. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to island mode, which is F4. I am going to load the model group dialog box, and I see that Dozie has 5 materials. So I'm going to set up multi-tile with 6 UDIM tiles. I'm going to press select. I'm going to distribute them in tiles by pressing in tiles, and then I'm going to put them into new groups. And the reason for doing that is that I am probably overly fond of groups, but the thing is also that it just keeps your islands organized. You know, it's just for me, it's just an easier workflow. So the first thing I'm going to do is click or double click because it's got several segments. I'm going to hold Control down. I'm going to select that one, and now we've selected the innards of the watch. This is of course completely optional to do. As I said, I like to keep it tidy when I'm working on stuff because with so many unwraps, it's sometimes hard to navigate. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so big on using groups. I'm going to put that one in a group because it's going to be cut. I'm going to put that one in a group. I'm going to hit Control M. Control M will always find in island mode geometrically identical shells. So I'm going to hit G to group those. And I'm going to do the same here, G to group. Control M, G to group. And I'm going to double click to do a quick pack just so that everything is roughly in the same area. So I don't have to look all over the map for it. Same there and same there. And then again, I'm just going to quickly hit P for a quick pack. Right now we are not focusing on anything to do with texel density. This first part is purely about the unwraps. I also see that I need to group these. And I will also just group these. And sometimes it's just quicker to click them than to group them. Need to pack those. Okay. Now that everything is nicely grouped and in place, I am going to start with what I call the innards of the watch. So the most common way to cut this is the glaringly obvious enter edge mode by pressing F2 and then just selecting the edge that goes here. So I'm just going to press C to cut. But there's also two other ways to use to cut, which I want to show you. If you want to cut on the inside of what I think is the glass, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the glass, and your selection does this, that it doesn't follow the loop, you may want to go to edge loop parameters and tweak your angle and edge count limit, but the easiest way to deal with something like that is to just turn on geometric. Geometric was created for following the geometry on triangulated mesh, and it does that really well. But if you're lazy and don't want to play with the sliders, turn on geometric on nice quaddy meshes like this as well, because it works equally well. The other way to cut I'm going to show you is one of my favorites. It's the magic wand. As you can see, I have a white poly going all over. And that is the magic wand in selection mode. When it's white, it's you're working on your selection. And when it's blue, you've made your selection. And I'll show you how this works. So the first thing that you need to do with the magic wand is always just adjust the sliders according to what you want. So the max edge angle, the smoothing, or the if it's got noisy shapes, if it's got if you need to select isolated groups, just play with the sliders. But even a teeny tiny uh, amount of edge on this slider will easily create you a shape, and that's what the magic wand does. It's pretty much a cookie cutter for UV maps. So got my white area, I'm going to click my left mouse button and it's blue. Blue means that it's selected, and if it's selected it means it's ready to be cut like this. So press C and cut. I'm going to hit Control Z just to uncut. And you can grow your selection, of course, by pressing the plus key on the numpad or the minus key on the numpad. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then I'm just going to hit C to cut. And then I think I am done with my cuts, so I'm just going to hit U to unwrap, P to pack, just to see what I've got. And I think that I have distortion here. I'm going to go back to island mode just to look. Yes, I do. But at the same time, I am thinking that that distortion is pretty well hidden because it's on the inside of what I think is the, I have no idea about watch terminology. The last 5, 6 years, I've been using a Fitbit. So I think that this is the date panel, but I'll click H to hide it. And as you can see, the only place that I've got distortion is here. So what I will do instead is I will put a cut. That's geometric in action. If your edges are acting weird when you don't expect them to, see if geometric is still active. I'm going to hit C, and I'm going to hit U to unwrap, and I'm going to hit O to optimize. Because it's so small, I think that this is going to work just fine in Painter. And if you were to get rid of the distortion, you just and you were adding it into a game engine, the extra vertices just aren't worth it. Even though game engines have uh, come a long way in terms of their hissy fits about vertices. But in general, just leave it at that because I think that if it's so invisible and with such a negligible amount of benefit, just leave it. Okay, Peter Pack again. I am looking for that little panel. I think yeah, it's hidden. Let's see, just press Y to bring everything back, and then just isolate quickly just to see if I have everything. Oops. Yeah, okay, so that is done. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to work with what I call the crinkly bits. As I said, I have zero knowledge about watch anatomy. If it were a castle, I'd probably start talking about crenellations, merlons, battlements, but uh, for now the crinkly bits just work. I also think that I'm going to give the crinkly bits a cut that aligns with the center here, just for the sake of symmetry. So I'm going to cut there. And I'm not going to cut yet because I'm going to isolate it. Oops. And I'm going to just hit U to unwrap. The reason why I was pressing F4 was that I do know that there is distortion here. So this is too much distortion, and this really, really needs to be unwrapped because this is probably not going to go down too well with Painter, and I really don't think that you should depend on triplanars, not even in Painter. So the issue here is that the polygons, when they are crinkly like that, it's double the amount of, they'll take double the amount of space because they're at that angle, or they're built like that. And this also means that because of all the angularity and edges, the mesh really doesn't have anywhere to have any space to actually unwrap. So we need to cut it, at the risk of sounding super American, to just give it some space. Okay, so I have learned the hard way that the best place to put cuts on models like this is at the edge of a granulation like that. Um, I said it, granulation. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure it's not called that. Okay, so just quickly diving back into where that symmetric edge was, because of course I forgot to. Here we are. There, and then back to isolating, and I'm going to cut. I am also going to be very lazy. I am going to go back to island mode, and I am going to let Rizom do all the heavy lifting for me. And I'm going to do that by forcing the polygons to unwrap and place themselves vertically. So as you can see, it got rid of all the distortion on the edgy bits. And if I mouse over and press O to optimize, ta-da, no distortion. And the same here, no distortion. I am going to just quickly group them. And I'm going to use Rizom's new tool to give them a little distance. Okay, so that's the inside. And I think I'm just going to let them swap places. And And this is just for sake of keeping it tidy. You don't really have to do this. It's just easier if uh, it's a little tidy. Also, I see that this is little dipped, so I am going to add two horizontal constraints. And in many cases, if you need to straighten a mesh, a constraint and an optimize can in many cases be enough. So I'm going to press Alt T. That adds a vertical, no, sorry, I keep mixing those two. That adds a horizontal constraint. And if I now press O to optimize, you can see that it straightens out. And it's the same here. And I think then I'm just going to just select the islands, and then I'm going to also use the vertical straighten option here. So it's just straight. Straight edges are always easier to pack than curved or crinkly edges. So that's also one of the reasons why I've got them facing inwards. It's again not a rule to absolutely live by, but it is one of those things that makes unwrapping and also using your map in Painter or Mari or other texturing applications just easier. Okay, so I'm going to hit Y, moving on. I'm also going to turn on my Viewport texture grid. And the reason why this does not look like the one that Remy has implemented in Rizom is that I went to my preferences and I loaded one of my personal grids, which are most definitely not in a folder named deletables, but if you've seen the UV grid tutorial on the Rizom website, that's where the grid is. And it's also in our Discord freebies. So this is the grid I'm using. So if you don't want to have the standard grid, you can always load your own. And and the reason my screen is blue rather than gray and black is that it's easier on the eyes, and I set the colors here. And the last thing I'm going to show you is clipping. If you have issues with clipping, try lowering this setting. The default is 0.01 and mine is set to 0.001. So give it a try. The reason why the mesh now also turned black and only the flat bits are colored is because I have my show both wrapped and unwrapped mesh settings on. So if I only have the 3D, then it will just show the unwrapped model, the non-wrapped model, I'm sorry. Then if I show flat, then it will only show the actual unwrapped model. So I prefer to show both. And especially on models with a lot of loose bits like the links here, that is super handy once you start using the scripts. So next thing I'm going to do is I am going to decide which bits I want to cut, and I think that's going to be another thingy, I don't know what's called. One issue with, of course, the black bits is that it wreaks havoc with how you select stuff. So I am just going to mouse over and I'm going to hit I to isolate. Then I'm going to select it, move to the 2D ports, and I'm going to press F. Regardless of which viewport you're in, if you press F, just like many other applications, Rizom will always focus on your selection. Okay, so this seems another becrinkled little element. So I think I'm going to put a cut here. And press C to unwrap and U to also unwrap. I am then going to do the same thing as the other crinkles. I'm just trying to find out where the crinkle actually goes, if that's the phrase. Yeah, I'll take it there and then see. And I'll make a cut there. You to unwrap. And I know that it needs more than that unwrap, but here we go. I'm going to put my cut there. And I'm going to put my cut there, 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 and there. And then I'm also going to separate that one and going to weld that one together. And what I did now was I pressed E, which I shouldn't have done. If you hit E, the screen where your mouse overing, like this, or like this. If you press E, then your screen will be just single screen rather than split screen. But you can, of course, adjust by using the sliders here. Okay, I'm going to go back to F4. I'm going to take that one, that one, that one, and that one, and I'm going to force them to squarify. Also going to hit U to unwrap that one, U to unwrap that one, and P to pack. And it looks okay, but I do have some distortion. So I'm going to switch to the black and white checker. And my texel density is interesting enough. So I'm going to just quickly hide that one because I don't need it. Don't need that one either right now. I'm going to just hit P to pack and see what I've got. Okay, so there is a vague distortion here. But because the bit is so small, or the piece is so small, I think we can get away with it. I am going to hit O to unwrap this bit, or optimize that bit, and optimize this one as well. And I see that apparently I forgot to make a cut somewhere, so... there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just going to force it to straighten again. And on this one, I'm going to select the edge, and then I'm going to press Alt-V. That adds a vertical constraint. Then I'm going to press O. And in many cases, this is my preferred way of working with an already optimized mesh, because already unwrapped mesh, because I know a lot of people add a constraint and then they unwrap again. I think you get much better results if you unwrap, then add your constraint, and then hit optimize instead. Actually, I can try doing that here. I just need to see where I'm at now. So add my constraint, Alt V, and optimize. Yeah, see? Only thing that's a bit different is that the edges are a bit more angle-y, but that's because of the cut, nothing else. Okay, so then this one is also done. What we need to do is, of course, do something about that texel density, but that's in the part where we start packing. But there is a big discrepancy here, so just going to see if it helps. No, probably have, because I haven't set my settings yet, but we will get to this, no worry. And we're actually almost done with the heavy manual lifting of cutting. Once we're done with these bits, we are going to change over to scripting, or scripts that will help you unwrap. And after that, we are going to take a look at how to use the auto seam function. Let's just start by selecting these two, and I'm just going to isolate them. And I'm going to hit F2 to enter edge mode. And I'm just going to place some cuts. So cut along this edge, and I'm going to cut along this edge, and this edge. Okay, and then that one, that one, that one, that one. Oops. That one, and not entirely that one. Okay, so control, and then just click. You can also shift drag, but I'll show you that in a bit. Okay, so I'm now going to hit control, or I'm going to hit Alt C. And what Alt C does is that it copies selected edges onto geometrically identical shells. So it's kind of like the same as Control M, just for edges or selected edges. So I'm just going to hit C to cut, mouse over, U to unwrap, U to unwrap. These are the most distortion-free cuts. There's only one issue with them, and that is that they are going to be hard to pack because the shapes are so irregular. It's no big, but I think I am going to just tweak the shapes a bit. And I'm going to do that by Alt C and then cutting. And then I actually think that even though I hate having a cut on this bit, I think the best place to weld it back together again would be here. So again, Alt C and then W to weld. And then O to optimize. O to optimize. P to pack. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to straighten them. And I'm going to use the vertical straightener for that. And I'm not seeing that being too good, so I am holding down the spacebar and the right mouse button, and I'm doing it manually. And I'm just going to also quickly align the top, and I'm also going to give them some space. Okay, good. Boom, done. Okay. The only thing left now is to... I'm going to just quickly switch. Hang on. Here we go. The rest is actually automated cutting. And by that, I mean that we have a script called the AutoCut script, which we released last summer as the first installment in the budding Rizom user script library. And what it does is that instead of you having to do a lot of the cutting and then unwrapping manually, it will do that for you. So I'm going to mouse over this one to isolate it. And I'm going to place my cuts. I'm looking at the shape right now. I'm then going to, oops, press Control Z. Here we go. And the same on this side. And, oops. I think I kind of lost my way here. I'm going to restart. I was a bit distracted. There's a cat sitting on my desk with a very accusing glare. I mean, heaven forbid I hit the catnip. Okay, so just going to select these edges. not that edge, and then that edge. And then I'm going to hit Control Shift, and I am going to deselect those edges. Then I'm going to press C to cut, and then I'm going to do what you always need to do when you are just looking and testing your cuts. And that unwraps just fine. So I'm going to hit Control Z, Control Z. I'm going to hit Y to bring back the rest, and then I'm going to hit F4, and I'm going to mouse over or select, Control M, and isolate. And for some reason it didn't do what I wanted it to. So let's try that again. Control M, see? Isolate, then hit F2, and then this is where the magic starts, and I am going to take you to the script hub. That's on the far side of the Rizom top toolbar. And I'm going to check if my script is loaded. I do that by mousing over the S, and the S stands for slot, so it's slot 0, slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. And then I am going to show you how to load a script. And if you have a folder where you keep your script, you just point to them. I have mine in a folder called Rizom scripts. I modify my scripts to suit my needs. Remy is the one who made the AutoCAD script. So I'm going to load this one. And I am going to press S3. Probably also zoom out a bit just to make sure that it comes over the keyboard overlay. So I'm going to press S3, and I think the French phrase is voila. And automatically unwrapped and grouped. Not packed though, or not stacked rather. And you can do that two ways. If you want to stack this, you press Alt G. If you just want them to overlap and not be a group per se, I'm just going to press Control G to ungroup them. Also, you should know that any ungrouped mesh in Rizom has got a Rizom orange edge. If something is grouped or stacked, it will always have a colored edge, but if it's not grouped or stacked, it will always have a Rizom orange edge. Okay. I can also press Shift C, and that will make them overlap. So it's up to you how you choose to do this. So my preference is right now most definitely Alt G to stack them. Would also be really good if they behaved. So Alt G. I was pressing Control G. And that's another thing. If you have multiple tiles selected on top of each other, if you just press 1, you see that it's a standard, I think it's pronounced cyan. Cyan? Let's just say light blue. And if you have multiple islands selected under there, it will turn much, much brighter. So just be aware of that, because it's handy as a signifier when you're working. So that is the first set of auto cuts. In addition, I thought I would show you what to do in case you really don't like your cuts. Instead of reloading your mesh with no UVs, I'm just going to press Control G so it's not, and then I'm just going to spread them. So if you don't like your cuts or your islands or anything that you've done, rather than reloading your mesh and losing work, potentially, it's much easier to just run one of the reset scripts. So if I press my full reset script on a set of selected islands, it will do this. It will completely reset, which means that you can start from scratch. And then we also have, no, let me just undo that. We also have a script that welds an island back together, like that. And then we have a script that welds across islands, but let's see. I am just going to cut that one into, and then I think I picked the wrong thing, but let's see. Yeah, it welds it back together again there as well. So all 4 scripts are available on the Rizom website. They will also be linked to in the comments under the tutorial. Grab them, play with them, because they actually do make your workflow a hell of a lot easier. Okay, so I am going to hit Y to go back, and this is where you actually see the black bits coming in handy. I'm going to do the exact same, Control M. Just making sure that I've got everything selected. I to isolate, and I'm not going to bother to just isolate one mesh, because that's pretty much just for demo. And the reason why I prefer to cut these types of islands the way I do is that it's habit, first of all, but second of all, I also find that if they are um, cross-shaped, like these unwraps, they're also just easy to arrange, they're easy to stack, they're just easy and flat to work with. So that's why I choose to cut them the way I do. I am now again just going to hit S3 or slot 3, and boom, that's another flat set. Back to Y, click, Control M. We're actually just going to choose another way to select that, and that is to just click the islands in the little group handle down here. That's another way to select, and you can also always double click. You don't always have to go Control M. So islands, isolate, and rinse, repeat. Almost done, by the way. And it would be good if I remembered to change to edge mode. And again, same type of cut. And I see I cut the wrong end. And I also remember that I actually didn't do what I strongly recommended, to always check your cuts, but I'm so used to making these cuts that I do get a little lazy now and then. I'm sorry. So, need to get rid of the top ones here and here. Just check if I didn't lose anything there, which I did. And rinse, repeat. Boom. And no, I'm just going to keep going. So F4, just going to hit Control M, I to isolate, and again, the same type of cuts. And I'm just going to remove the top of this one and rinse, repeat. And that's fine. Oops, I meant to press Y. Okay, so we have two groups left. F4, Control M, isolate. Actually, if I select geometric, it doesn't give me the cut path I want, so that's why I'm not using geometric for this. And almost done. I just hit a button I wasn't supposed to, it's just the center button. Rinse, repeat. And I think I'm actually going to weld these bits here back together. So just Control C, W to weld, and then Y to go to the last bit. Control M, Y to isolate. And done with the last bit. Just going to check my cuts, and yeah, I'm just going to, again, weld these ones back together, Alt-C, W, and done. And look at the lovely look at the lovely mess we have. I'm just going to hit Control A, or change that first, Control A, and then I'm going to hit Control G to ungroup, and I'm just going to plaster them all over the UV tiles. And then we are going to take a look at how to use the auto seam function, and after that we are going to be packing the watch. So now that we've walked through the basics of manual unwrapping in Rizom, I thought that I'd end this session by showing you how to unwrap in Rizom even quicker. And the way to do that is to use the function that we're probably the most famous for, which is the auto seam function. So if you go to F2 to enter edge mode, and load your mesh from scratch, which I've already done by Control R. You can click on the auto seams panel on the right hand side of your UI. I'm just going to close this one as well. Just give myself some more space. And as you can see, we have several algorithms for unwrapping. Pelt, which is aimed at organic models. Mosaic for those wonderful, really not sure how to auto unwrap this. Then we've got one of my favorites, the sharp edges, or the one that's probably the best suited for hard edge. Then there's the ubiquitous box model, or the box unwrap, which is also really, really good for light map unwraps. Then we've got link holes, or select hole links. This is really good for photogrammetry, by the way, because it does keep them open slash selected. And then we also have handles for, you know, those bent cylinders. As I said, I'm going to go to hard edges. And one thing that you need to be aware of is that it kind of works in reverse here. So the lower you drag this bar, the more cuts Rizom will make. See? And then if you drag it back up to, say, for instance, 70, which is the default, it will make less cuts. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to drag or set my spinner to 85. Do want less angles, and as you can see, or less cuts. And as you can see, this is what Rizom proposes. And I'm fine with that. One thing that you may want to turn off any high or high quality settings here, because that's going to affect your packing time. I am now going to go to advanced options, and I'm going to use one of my super secret favorite functions, which is the re-weld function. Some of you may remember that just before GDC last year, I was working on an article for 3D Artist, and it was pretty much the motorbike from hell. Triangulated, cut up, it was impossible to weld it back, but you know, deadlines are deadlines, and GDC is GDC. So Remy showed me how to use the re-weld function, and it actually did help a lot in getting rid of all those loose polys and loose islands, because Rizom has a function that lets you re-weld stuff back together. And I'm going to show you the difference in how that works. So just going to hit select. I'm just going to skip unwrap, and I'm going to go straight to unwrap and cut, unwrap and pack. And then wait. And as you can see, so many lovely little islands. And personally, I really hate working on maps like this. If they're given to me, I will always remap if I get something like that, because it's just too fragmented. And I'm pretty sure that this wouldn't be too popular in a game engine either, with all those vertices, even on a fairly low poly model like this. So I'm going to hit Control Z. And now I am going to turn on Reweld. I'm not going to touch anything else. And I'm going to go back and hit pack again. As you can see, I have a lot more welded islands. Some of them are even cut the way I prefer to cut them myself. And I also have some interesting little clusters here and there. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to enter island mode. I'm going to hit Control M. Then I see that, or I suspect I should actually check, so I'm just going to isolate. As you can see, the islands are cut through, and we really don't want that. So just going to hit Y to go back, and then just hit Control M. I am now going to isolate them, and this is one of those places where the reset script comes in handy, because I don't have to reload my mesh. I know people are asking why a lot about, can't you just, reload the mesh? And as also mentioned earlier, uh, it's just much easier and faster to reset parts of your model. So I'm going to go back to F2. I'm going to select that island, or not that island, but, and you know how we're going to cut this. So there's nothing revolutionary here. It's just, we're just tidying up the cuts that were made and making them a bit more efficient. So just going to edge, and I'm going to hold on shift. And I am now going to just run the script that's already loaded. Boom, done. So that's one part of the tidy up. And then I see that I have circles, which I also really don't want. Just going to weld them. You see that this is probably my famous crinkly bits, if I'm not mistaken, but I seem to actually be mistaken. So let's figure out where this one belongs. And sometimes you just, oh, it was the crinkly bits. Okay. I will re-weld and remap that in a bit, and then see what sticks to this one. See what sticks to that one. I also see that we have a bit of a mess here. And this is, what can I say? It's a perfect bad unwrap. Okay, so I am just going to just hit all and then Control G because I really don't want it grouped, but I do want just to have a quick pack to see where I'm at, and I see that I turned off distribute. So again, just a quick pack. Boom. If you don't have redistribute on, your islands will in many cases stay outside the UV tiles, and I like to turn it off because if I am on a multi-tile map and I'm struggling with, for instance, texel density, I tend to turn off the redistribute. So that was what was going on. I will cover this in part 2, by the way. I'm good with the cuts, so I'm just going to tidy up this one, and I need to actually on that one, yeah, I'm going to just do a quick reset of that one. And as I said, this is why I'm such a big fan of the reset scripts, because again, why reload if you can reset? It saves you for a few clicks as well, because otherwise it would have been Shift R to reset and then Control All in edge mode and then probably weld. So that's why, as I said, I'm a big fan. Just going to do a quick isolate, and we're going to just go for the same cuts that we already did. Just going to cut along here, here, there, and then here and here, and here and here, and then as you hopefully remember, Alt-C, C to cut, unwrap, and then glue them back together. I prefer to do it like this because then you get to glue them back together when they are unwrapped, and in some cases that actually makes it easier to optimize. So Alt-C. I could have sworn I put a cut there, but okay. Alt-C and then C. And then weld on the inside, much as it pains me. And not there. Alt-C, weld, and boom, just needs a quick optimize, and we have unwrapped it, so Y to go back. And then now that we know how to fix the crinkly bits, we are going to also fix the crinkly bits. And this is what I mean by knowing how to do stuff manually, because even though we use the auto seam, there will always be some stuff that might need tweaking or might need fixing. And by doing the watch first, it's just easier to have a workflow where you actually know how to do that. So I'm just going to hit U to unwrap. I'm not going to bother with squarifying because we've already covered that. And then I'm just going to cut and cut and cut. Well, actually, I'm going to bother with squarifying. It's just easier to pack. And then, oh, to optimize, but I am not going to bother with any constraints. So that one's cleaned up. And remember, middle mouse button, and then just a quick isolate. And it just seems to need some... Yeah, I'm going to real weld this one as well. Boom, done. And I'm going to put my cut in the exact same place where I put the other one, and I'm going to remember to unwrap it this time. Cut. That's one crinkly down. And two crinkly down. And this should be welded. Cut. Weld. Unwrap. Pack. Then straighten these. Which you now also know how to do. Sorry, nothing exciting going on in the 3D screen, to be honest. So Alt V. Oops. Mouse over, optimize, and same here. Mouse over, optimize. And I'm not going to bother with that one. We know it's what the issue is with it, so I'm just going to leave it. G to group because I lost it last time, or lost parts of it last time. And then Y to just put everything back together. And that's pretty much it. Now you know how to unwrap both manually and automated. So now it is actually time to start looking at packaging for real. In the next chapter, in the second video rather, we are going to look at packing properties. We're going to look at how you can use texel densities, as well as locking, unlocking, and also how to just do some general packing optimizations. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.